Welcome back. We're in Chapter 19, QuizA, question number 5. Let's take a minute and read the prompt. According to a September 2004 Gallup poll, about 73% of 18 to 29-year-olds said they were registered to vote. And just a reminder, Gallup is like the leading polling organization, at least in the USA, if not in the whole world. So when they talk about Gallup polls, we would talk about the true proportion or the true population proportion, which we know is P. Okay, so about 73% of 18 to 29-year-olds said they were registered to vote. Question 5. If the professor only knew the information about the September 2004 Gallup poll and wanted to estimate the percentage of her students who were registered to vote to within plus or minus 4% with 95% confidence, how many students should she sample? So now we're looking for a new N, a number of students that she should be sampling. Okay, so what information do we have here? Well, plus or minus 4%, this value right here is called a margin of error. And we know the margin of error formula. The margin of error formula actually comes from the confidence interval. The margin of error would be critical Z times the standard deviation of P. Okay, so let's take a look and plug into our margin of error formula. And again, they told us it was 95% confidence, so we will have a critical Z of 1.96. And again, the reason we're using a P and not a P hat in this case is we're given the true population proportion from our Gallup poll. Okay, so our critical Z is going to be 1.96. Our P will be 0.73. 1 minus P will be 1 minus 0.73 or 0.27. And we're going to divide by N. But in this case, we're looking for N because they ask us how many students should she sample. So let's plug it in. Wherever we see margin of error, we're going to put in 4%, 0.04. Our critical Z for a 95% confidence interval is 1.96. Our value of P is 0.73 as given in the prompt. 1 minus P would be 0.27, and we're dividing this by N. So we need to solve for N. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to divide both sides by 1.96. So take a minute in your calculator and let's do 0.04 divided by 1.96. And you should roughly get a number that resembles 0.0204. Okay, so we're all right about here. Can you store this number in your calculator? Okay. So now what's our next step in solving for N? Oh, we're going to square both sides. So just hit your squared button in your calculator. And you should get a number roughly about 4.16 times 10 to the negative 4th. Our next step would be multiply both sides by N. So we'd get 4.16 times 10 to the negative 4th. N equals 0.73 times 0.27. And our final step would be divide both sides by 4.16 times 10 to the negative 4th. So in our calculator, we've got, we should have the number 4.16 and all the trailing digits times 10 to the negative 4th in our calculator. So let's do 0.73 times 0.27. That gives us 0.1971, and we're going to divide it by the stored number we have in our calculator here. So divided by, I'm just going to arrow up to that number, and you get 473.2, or roughly 474 students. So let's make sure we're answering the question. How many students should she sample? And the answer would be 474 students. However, there's a slight problem with this answer. What might be the problem? Well, she only has 700 students. So this would violate the 10% condition because the 10% condition says our sample should always be less than 10% of the population. So in concluding, although we got an answer of 474 students, since there are only 700 students in the professor's class, she cannot sample this many students without violating the 10% condition. That wraps up Chapter 19, Quiz A. See you again soon.